It was early morning in Konoha. The sun was just beginning to rise over the horizon and bring warmth to the cool forest air. Naruto and Azula had risen early that morning so that Naruto could get in some firebending training before he had to attend the academy. They had gone to the training ground near their apartment before the sun rose. Once there, Naruto had begun to go through firebending forms and Azula had sat down on a stump and pulled out a scroll, using fire summoned in one of her hands to give her enough light to read it. Azula looked up from reading the scroll to look at Naruto. He was going through the second tier of firebending forms, having just finished learning the first tier of forms to Azula's satisfaction. "Wrong," she called out, making him stop in the middle of performing a punch. "Your stance is too rigid. Loosen up, don't feel like you have to anchor your feet to the ground. Firebending forms involve a lot of footwork. You have to be ready to dodge and move at a moment's notice. Think of yourself as a flame, constantly flickering and changing. Start the form over from the beginning and remember to stay on your toes more, right?" Naruto called back to her. "I'll get it right this time, Azula Haim." As he began the form again, she continued to watch him for a few moments, making sure he corrected his previous mistake. Seeing that he had indeed fixed his stance, she went back to studying the scroll she held in her lap. It had been 3 weeks since she had arrived in this world. 3 weeks since she had come to this village and she started living with the blonde 10-year-old. In those 3 weeks she had come to learn more about Konoha and the shinobi world. She had also gone to ask the Hokage if there was any way that she could learn to read and write in the language of this world. She had found that being illiterate was restricting at best. At its worst it was downright crippling to her interactions with the people of this village. Fortunately, the Hokage had access to a scroll that had been written centuries earlier by the Senju clan when the lost Prince Ling had come to this world. Apparently the ancient prince had the same issue as she did and with collaboration with his Senju caretakers had created this scroll that translated the two written languages, allowing them to learn. Azula found it almost too convenient that this scroll had been stored along with the other records of the lost prince's arrival in this world, but she wasn't one for looking a gift Komodo rhino in the mouth. Once she had access to the translations, she found that learning to read the language had been rather easy. She could now read nearly every sign she came across, but there was still room for improvement. Writing had been an altogether different story. She just couldn't seem to get the characters to look the way they were supposed to. She had burned many pieces of paper to ash in her anger when she made mistake after mistake in writing the various kanji. "I'm done, Azula Haim," Naruto called over to her. Looking up once again, she saw him standing, looking expectantly at her, waiting for her to give him the next exercise. She smiled, happy with his progress. The boy had taken to firebending like a true prodigy. He soaked up the knowledge she shared with him and he never made a mistake twice. "Alright then," she said. "I want you to summon fire to your hand. We're going to run through heat manipulation again." Naruto nodded and held out his hand, palm facing upward, summoning a small fire to float above it. Seeing him ready to begin, Azula said, "Now focus on decreasing the heat." She watched as the fire in his hand became a more red color, showing it was cooling. "Good. Now quickly, make it as hot as you can," she commanded. Naruto's face became a mask of intense concentration as the flame rapidly changed from red to orange and then slowly became lighter in color. After a few moments it became a light blue in color. "Well done," Azula praised. "Now bring down the temperature slowly." As she watched the blonde boy continue the exercise, Azula couldn't help but wonder how great his skill would grow in months and years. He had shown that he could control fire to an extent she had never seen before, except in masters like her father and uncle. He had the innate ability to shape fire and make it move to his will. His fire seemed denser, for lack of better word, than that of other firebenders. Increasing and decreasing the heat was a little bit more difficult for him, but he was improving rapidly. He could already summon blue fire if he concentrated hard enough. Azula suspected that in a few months he would be able to use it with ease and likely be able to apply it to battle. She thought about how frightening he would be on the field of battle in later years. While she didn't know all of what his shinobi training involved, she did know it involved learning how to use and master several types of weapons, including throwing knives. That combined with his natural talent for firebending would make him fearsome indeed. If what the Hokage had told her was true, he would also be able to access a demon's power later on in life as well. Thinking of the raw potential and power this boy had made Azula shiver. She had learned to appreciate power at an early age, and Naruto certainly had staggering amounts of it. She had already begun trying to think of ways to bring him to the Fire Nation with her when she returned. The village seemed to have alienated Naruto to a great extent, so convincing him to leave might not be too hard. It also helped that he seemed to hang on her every word and action. She didn't know whether this was a result of him finally having found a familial connection, distant as it may be, or if it was something more akin to hero worship. It could perhaps be simple infatuation. No matter what it was, it would work in her favor. If he wanted a family, she could always convince her father to adopt the boy into the royal line officially. Her father respected power, and she was certain that Naruto would be a much better son than Zuko. If it was hero worship, she would play on that to make want to help her in her quest for the throne. If his feelings were that of infatuation, she would feed and increase those feelings until they became love. She made herself seem like the only woman who could understand him, the only one who was worthy of him. She knew of course that if this was the course of action she needed to take, it would mean reciprocating the boy's feelings, although that wouldn't be so bad. She could tell even now that Naruto would be quite the looker as he grew older. The only two problems she could think of in her plan were that she had as of yet no way of deciphering which of these feelings Naruto held for her. The second problem was the Hokage. The old man seemed to care for the boy quite a bit. Indeed, he doted on the boy and treated him like a grandson. However, he had also hinted that Naruto would be a powerful asset to the village in later years, likely much for the same reasons that Azula wanted him to go to the Fire Nation. More importantly, Naruto obviously cared for the aged shinobi leader, which would make it more difficult to convince him to leave Konoha. She had no idea how she was going to be able to remove the Hokage as an obstacle, but she suspected she had an opportunity to solve her first problem later that day. A week ago Naruto had approached Azula rather nervously. He had informed her that the next week was to be an open house day at the academy. Apparently this was a day when family and friends of the students were allowed to come to class and watch them. The students were supposed to be showing off their skills and knowledge to observers, as well as scoring points to add to their overall grades. After Naruto had explained all this to Azula, he had asked if she would like to come watch him, since she was the closest and only relative he had. The opportunity was too great to pass up. Not only would she be able to possibly decipher the boy's feelings, but she would be able to learn more of the shinobi arts. She knew terribly little of these warriors, other than that they were adept at using stealth and seemed to possess superhuman powers. She suspected that their power might even surpass those of benders, but she had no way of knowing just yet. It had also been an opportunity to instill some pride into the young boy, pride in the Fire Nation, and in his royal heritage, both of which he would need if Azula's plan was to succeed. Upon hearing that he would be showing his skills in front of many of the noble clans of Konoha, Azula had dragged Naruto into town to find suitable clothing for him to wear. She wanted him to wear clothes that would show he was descended from royalty and at the same time, allow him the freedom of movement in battle. It wasn't that Azula actually cared what the clans of the village thought of her and Naruto, but if he was able to impress them, it would make the boy happy that he wasn't being looked down on. He would then associate this happiness with pride in the Fire Nation and the royal family. This in turn would make it easier for Azula to convince him to come back to her world with her. If this showed the so-called noble clans what true nobility was like, that was just a bonus in her eyes. She had eventually found an outfit that was so perfect for the occasion that Azula had briefly wondered if these events were guiding destiny or fate. The outfit consisted of a loose pair of black pants and shirt. On top of those was placed a long flowing robe that was deep red in color and had gold trim. Azula had paid for the outfit to be modified to Naruto's exact size and also threw in a little extra to have the Fire Nation emblem sewn into the back of the robe in black thread. All in all, it had cost them a chunk of their monthly stipend, but Azula thought it well worth the expense. She knew of course that Naruto would outgrow the outfit quickly, but it would serve its purpose for the moment and other outfits could be acquired later. Azula took notice of the sun's position in the sky and called out to Naruto. "Naruto, that's enough training for now. It appears to be time to leave for the academy." Hearing the older girl's call, the blonde bounded over to her as she stood up and put away her scroll. Heading out of the training ground, the pair made their way through the streets of Konoha. Most people were only just now starting to head out of their homes, so they didn't encounter much traffic on the way to the academy. When they finally arrived, they found that they were a little early. Several students and their parents had already arrived and were standing in the schoolyard. Azula also took notice that the Hokage was also in attendance and was talking to one of the academy instructors. Azula and Naruto stood a little ways off from the rest of the group and waited for the classes to start so that they could enter the building. As more and more students and their families showed up, a few of the children took notice of Naruto's new appearance and Azula's presence next to him and began to quietly mutter amongst themselves about who this girl was and why she was next to the class clown. After a few minutes, a group of the more curious children came over to them. Azula watched as they approached Naruto. A boy with brown hair and red markings on his face walked up to the blonde before asking the question they all had on their minds. "Hey, Naruto, what's up with the weird clothes?" he asked. Naruto simply shrugged before replying. "They're just new clothes that I'm supposed to wear. They're supposed to be more fitting for someone of royal blood to wear than what I had before." This statement made the brown-haired boy blink in confusion. He seemed to be thinking about the implications of Naruto's answer when a girl with long blonde hair spoke up. "Yeah right, Naruto Baka. You're not even from a noble clan, let alone royalty. The girl said in a disbelieving tone. It was at this point that Azula decided to join the conversation. How do you know? She asked. The children all turned their attention to the older girl. A pink-haired girl raised her hand, as if she were in class, and asked who are you? Before Azula could answer, another voice spoke up. Her name is Azula Uzumaki. Everyone turned their heads to see the Hokage walking over to the group. Azula here is a princess from a very distant land. She's come to stay in Konoha for now though, and is living with Naruto, who is her distant relative. When he said this, the group of children turned back to Naruto and Azula with looks of surprise and awe. Several of the girls appeared to have stars in their eyes as they looked at Azula. They couldn't believe that they were meeting a real princess. The brown-haired boy who had asked Naruto about his clothing laughed. Oh, so she's his relative. And here I thought the idiot might have gotten a partner. He said in a teasing tone. Azula silently thanked the boy. This was just the kind of comment that she had been waiting for. If Naruto had indeed become infatuated with her, he would likely have some reaction to this comment. If he did react, she could use this situation to help determine if this was the course of action she would need to take in order to bring him to the Fire Nation. She looked down at the blonde boy next to her and noticed a light blush on his face. Azula smirked. Oh yes, that was what she was hoping for. Still, it could be embarrassment from the thought of having a partner rather than having her specifically as an object of affection. She knew that children around Naruto's age were often easily embarrassed when it came to the thought of dating and romance. She would have to see if this was because of her or simply because of the idea. Azula leaned down and wrapped her arms around Naruto's neck, putting her face next to his. Oh? She questioned, looking right at the brown-haired boy. Are you certain I'm not his partner? You know, royalty often marry family members to keep the line pure, and Naruto-kun here is my distant relative. She said, making use of the kun honorific she had learned in the past few weeks. She was pleased to see Naruto's face go bright red. She watched him open his mouth and try to form words, only for nothing to come out. That reaction told her all she needed to know. The blonde had developed a crush on her. With time she could and would feed this affection in order to make him completely loyal to her. Of course, she had no way of knowing how long it would be before she could go home, but if all went to plan, Naruto would willingly come with her and fight for the Fire Nation. Naruto was frantically trying to think of a way out of this embarrassing situation. It was bad enough when Kiba had joked about Azula being his partner, but when the older girl put her arms around him and mentioned marriage, his brain almost shut down. Over the course of the last 3 weeks, he had come to like Azula. He knew from the beginning that she was pretty and powerful. That much was obvious by just looking at her, but it was when she had promised to never hate or fear him, like the villagers did, that he had really begun to look at her in a different light. He'd had a crush on Sakura, one of his classmates, for a while, and now he had developed one on Azula as well. He didn't make it as obvious as he had with Sakura, knowing that Azula was rather proud and, for that matter, scary. He would have felt ridiculous asking the older girl out on a date, especially since he really had no idea what to do on one. He only asked Sakura on dates because he'd heard it was a good way to bond with those you liked, and she had been nice to him when the academy first started. All this coupled with the fact that, even if it was only a joke, this was the first time a girl had shown a possibility of returning his feelings. It was just too much for the boy's brain, making him dangerously close to overloading. Fortunately, he was saved from further embarrassment when his teachers called everyone inside to begin the class. As the people filtered into the classroom, the students took their seats, and their families took spots along the edge of the class to observe them. Once everyone had settled into their spots, an instructor with a scar on his face addressed the guests and the Hokage. Welcome, everyone, to this year's open house. I'm Haruka Yamino, one of the instructors here at the academy. We are honored to have you all here to see how your children are coming along and what they are learning. We are also most honored to have Hokage-sama here with us today. For the next hour and a half, the teachers asked questions about the history of Konoha and the shinobi world, calling on different students to answer each question. Through this, Azula learned that the village had only been around for a little over a century. She was also completely surprised to learn that ninjutsu could be used to fight using all 4 elements, as well as other elements for a select few individuals, like the famed Shadame Hokage, who controlled the wood element, Mokuton it was called. Azula, for the first time in her life, felt a little small. She was living in a strange new world, filled with people who had power akin to that of the Avatar. This realization made Azula come to 2 conclusions. The first was that if there was ever any doubt about whether manipulating Naruto into coming to the Fire Nation was a good idea or not, it was now gone. She not only wanted him to come, she needed him to come with her. The power of a demon inside of him, plus the ability to fight with all the elements, and a natural skill in firebending, the boy would be the greatest warrior the Fire Nation had ever seen. He would be the sword that would deliver her the throne, and eventually the entire world. Oh yes, she would make sure Naruto came with her. No matter what. The second realization she came to was that if she fought a higher level shinobi, she would be easily outclassed. She would have to find a way to either start learning the shinobi arts or find a way to counter them. If she was unable to do this, she had a feeling that she would very likely die before ever being able to get home to her own world. She understood now why she had felt such an instinctive fear of the Anbu, and now, to them, killing her would be child's play. It was a terrifying thought that the power that made the Avatar such a dangerous opponent was available to so many in this world. After the questions about the history of the village and shinobi world, the teachers took the students and observers outside to a training area where several human-shaped targets were set up. The teachers and students line up behind the targets and throw 10 kunai at them. Azula made note of each student that did exceptionally well, landing 7 or more kunai in the target. Of these students were the brown-haired boy from earlier, a dark-haired boy in a blue shirt and white shorts, a girl with pale eyes and blue hair, a boy that wore dark glasses and a high-collared jacket. She was quite happy when she saw Naruto join their ranks as he landed 7 kunai in his target, and she was even happier when she noticed a few of the adults looking surprised and impressed. Azula suspected that Naruto may have gotten lucky, as he had mentioned before that he was only ever ranked in the middle of the class when it came to throwing weapons like kunai and shuriken. Even so, it didn't matter if it was luck, as long as the adults of the noble clans assumed it was skill they would be impressed. Next, the academy instructors lead the group over to several circular arenas. Here the instructor with the scar on his nose, Iruka, gathered the attention of the guests. Now, here we're going to have each of the students spar against an instructor so that they can show off what they've learned. Because the student's opponent will be the students will be allowed to use some of their dot, he said. But that announcement, the students began gathering into groups at the different arenas to wait for their turn to fight. Azula noticed that Naruto was standing fairly close to her. She also noticed that he was supposed to fight the white-haired peasant that had called her a child several weeks earlier. Smirking, she walked over to Naruto and grabbed his shoulder, making the boy look up at her. Leaning down to whisper in his ear, she said, "Naruto, I want you to do your absolute best to defeat this man. Have you shown your classmates or teachers your bending yet?" Naruto shook his head. Azula had expressly told him not to bend without her round early on in their training. Good. She all but purred. "I give you permission to use it against this man. You likely don't have the skill to defeat him outright just yet. But if you manage to surprise him, you'll throw him off guard, and that will give you the edge. Do you understand?" He nodded. "I do, Azula Haim." "Good. Oh, and Naruto. Remember that when you fire a bend you must be ruthless to your opponent. No matter who they are. No mercy, just like I taught you. Don't disappoint me." But that said, she returned to the spot among the observers and waited for Naruto to face Mizuki. As she waited, she saw the Hokage walk up to stand beside her. Looking down at the 14-year-old girl, the man spoke. "What did you have to say to young Naruto?" he asked. Looking at the old shinobi leader, Azula said, "I just told him to do his best and to remember his training." Breathing out a stream of smoke from his pipe, the old man nodded in acknowledgement. "I see. I must say that I'm rather looking forward to seeing that bending you've been teaching the boy." He gave a chuckle at the look of surprise the girl gave him. "Oh, don't be so surprised that I know. I told you before, I know everything that happens in this village." Azula just remained silent and turned her attention back to where Naruto was. Naruto was bursting with anticipation. After 3 weeks of learning firebending from Azula, he was finally getting to show it off. He knew he had only mastered the first few forms, meant for beginners, and was only just beginning to learn the second-tier forms, but he felt confident that he could use his abilities in a spar like this. Naruto was also eager to impress Azula and show her that he was worthy of her tutelage. She had specifically asked him not to let her down, and he would do his absolute best to live up to her expectations. After what seemed like hours, Naruto finally got his turn to spar against the white-haired dot. Stepping into the ring, Naruto made the customary bow to his opponent. When Mizuki bowed back, they both got into their respective stances, Mizuki taking the Academy Taijutsu stance and Naruto taking a firebending stance. As Naruto looked across from him preparing to spar, he felt something in him rise. It was the same surging feeling that he'd felt when he first used his will to firebend. This time, however, the surge came with a rush of heat. His whole body felt warm, as if he had been exercising for hours on end. As the proctor began the match, he rushed at Mizuki, launching a punch at the man's torso. Mizuki easily blocked it and responded with a kick. Naruto saw the kick coming, but barely managed to dodge it by leaping to the right. He attacked with a kick of his own, which was also blocked. Mizuki sent a punch to Naruto's stomach, knocking the young boy back a few feet and causing him to double over for a second. All through the fight thus far, Naruto had felt the surge in him growing, expanding, begging to explode out of him. Rather than let it go, he had grabbed onto it, for lack of better word. The more he held on to the surging feeling, the hotter his body felt. He had kept holding on to it until he felt like his body would burst into flames. Now that Mizuki had knocked Naruto back a few feet, the boy saw an opening to surprise Mizuki. The blonde charged forward once again and saw Mizuki smirk, obviously thinking the boy was going to recklessly try another frontal assault. When he was less than a foot away from the white-haired man, Naruto stopped and dropped into a crouch, using his momentum to swing his right leg to the left in a sweeping gesture. As he did this, he let the surge inside him go, and he felt it shoot forth, flowing down his body towards his legs. When the surge reached his foot, watched a stream of bright orange fire blast out, following the sweeping arc his foot had made. The blast of fire caught Mizuki completely off guard, but he wasn't for nothing. He managed to dodge the orange blaze at the last second by jumping over it. Naruto saw this as he quickly got back on his feet, feeling the surge return full force. As Mizuki landed, Naruto kept up his assault, sending a punch that launched a blast of fire at the man's chest, just as his feet hit the ground. Mizuki once again dodged the attack at the last moment, this time by putting all his weight on his left foot and spinning into his left. This left him off balance, however, a fact Naruto took note of. He kicked high in the air, launching a stream fire that caught Mizuki in the right shoulder. As the fire hit, he gave a cry of pain and grabbed his shoulder with his left hand, the move that left him wide open. Naruto hesitated just for a moment, for one moment that seemed to drag on for an eternity. The blonde boy considered what he was about to do. He thought of the fact that this man was his teacher, he thought of the fact that he had probably scored enough points in the match to boost his grade in the class and impress the people watching. For one moment Naruto considered backing off and letting Mizuki recover. Then Azula's words rang through his mind. "No mercy. Don't disappoint me." Remembering those words, spoken to him by the girl who had come into his life so recently and suddenly, the girl who had quickly come to mean so much to the boy, Naruto made a choice. At that moment Naruto made a decision that would lead him down a path he never knew existed. He steeled himself and sent a punch and a blast of orange fire forwards. The blaze hit the right on his lower face. The man screamed as hot orange fire covered the left side lower jaw, and as he screamed some of the fire poured into his mouth, burning it in his throat. As Mizuki screamed and fell down clutching his face, the proctor rushed to the fallen and called over the medics who were standing by near the arenas. The medics immediately began to apply medical ninjutsu to the fallen man's wounds. As more medics rushed over, Naruto could only stand in there in shock, not really believing what he just did. He was vaguely aware of one of them pulling him away from the arena to get him out of the way of the medics. He felt a hand on his shoulder spin him around, and he came face to face with Azula, who was kneeling in front of him. The dark-haired girl pulled him into a hug, allowing him to bury his face in the space between her neck and shoulder as tears poured down his face. Azula stroked his golden hair and began whispering words of comfort in his ear, telling him he did what he was supposed to and that it wasn't his fault, that he had done well. All the commotion had drawn everyone's attention to Mizuki, who was now being taken away on a stretcher. As parents pulled the faces of their children away from the scene or as some watched a morbid spectacle, only they noticed Azula comforting Naruto. Only they saw the smile on the girl's face. Azula stood in the Hokage's office. Shortly after Mizuki had been taken to the hospital and the families and students had been sent home, they had taken Naruto and Azula to the Hokage Tower. Naruto had been left outside the office with an Anbu, but Azula had been all but dragged through the doors. Needless to say, Hiruzen Sarutobi was not happy. On the contrary, he was absolutely livid, and it showed. "Give me one reason," he said. "Give me one good reason why I should not have you taken away and executed for what you've done, girl." It took every ounce of Azula's self-control to keep from breaking under the man's stare. She focused on breathing, happy that while the aged shinobi was angry, he wasn't releasing any of the killing intent that he had when they had first met. Steeling herself, Azula looked at the man and finally spoke. "I'm not sure what you mean, Hokage-sama. I haven't done anything except train Naruto in firebending. Which, as you stated, you already knew about. That's not what I mean, and you know it." He growled at her. "I saw your reaction to what happened. You were happy about it. You were happy he injured Mizuki like that." It was true. When Azula had told Naruto to use firebending in the fight, she had expected him to score a glancing blow at best. When she had seen him hit the white-haired man with his flames directly in the face, she had been ecstatic. It gave her an opportunity to further her bonds with the boy and cement his loyalty to her. Of course, she hadn't expected them to react like this, at least not so soon. Yet she was not completely unprepared. She had a plan, she had no idea if it would work, but it was still a plan. "Of course I was happy," she stated. "I watched my pupil surpass everyone's expectations of him, including my own. I watched him land a crippling and winning blow on an opponent who completely outclassed him in every way. If that is not reason to be proud and happy for him, I do not know what is." I can honestly say that I did not expect the outcome of his match, but I will not hide that I am pleased by it. I am pleased that my student has come so far so fast, not because of what happened to them. Truthfully, it is the man's fault for underestimating Naruto. If he had not done so, he would likely be just fine. They growled. Azula was making a point, a good one. He knew there was more to it than she let on, but he wasn't sure what, and she hadn't lied to him at all. Looking her in the eye, he said, Naruto could be mentally scarred from this. Azula stared right back. She had expected this issue to be brought up the moment Naruto had wounded Mizuki. She already had her counter-argument ready. If he has been emotionally hurt, then I will comfort him. Also, if he is planning to become a shinobi, he will have to commit acts like this and much worse, quite often, unless I've been misled as to the purpose of your occupation. I would think it would be better for him and others like him to learn this early on. I certainly did when my father had me study the arts of war. They grimaced. She had made another good point, one he wished weren't true, but unfortunately it was. Indeed, in the past many shinobi had learned the same lesson at early ages. Especially during the Great Shinobi Wars. Reaching up to pinch the bridge of his nose, he let out a sigh. You realize of course that while my law still stays in effect, it is likely that few of the more stupid individuals in the village may see this as reason to come after the boy's blood. He asked her. Then I will protect him. Azula replied. She saw the look back at her, somewhat disbelieving. Hokage-sama, whether you realize it or not, in the short time I've been here that boy, Naruto, has become more important to me than you can possibly imagine. She didn't tell him why he was important of course, but she wasn't lying. It was a half-truth, but not one nearly as obvious as the one she tried telling when she first arrived in the village. Staring the man right in the eyes, Azula continued. Believe me when I say that I will never willingly let harm come to that boy, nor will I ever intentionally make his life more difficult. I will protect him all I can. Furthermore, I know that right now I can give him the comfort he needs. Were you to execute me, or separate me from him, I suspect he would irreversibly damaged. Sarutobi was angry. He was angry at this girl for teaching Naruto techniques that had caused this incident, although he knew that many clan children had far more dangerous techniques in their arsenal. He was angry at her for making 3 well thought out and valid points. He was angry at her because, even though it wasn't truly her fault, Naruto had taken his first step into the shinobi world. A step he suspected the boy hadn't been ready to take. He was angry at her because she was right. He couldn't punish the girl because she had done nothing wrong, nor could he punish Naruto, for he had obviously not truly expected to be able to harm the instructor, and had learned a harsh lesson. He would have to speak to the boy at another time, and make it very, very clear that such attacks were never to be performed against a fellow Konoha shinobi or ally, and that if he did so again he would be severely punished. However, the best thing that could be done now was to try to help him cope with the situation. Take Naruto home. He said to Azula. Take him home and let him rest and be there for him as much as you can. I will need to speak to him about this incident at some point, but for now let him rest. Azula smiled inwardly, knowing that her gamble had paid off and he had won this particular battle. She bowed and left the office. Once she exited, she took Naruto and exited the tower, heading to their apartment. Neither of them spoke on the way there. When they entered the apartment, she guided him to his room and sat down on the bed next to him. She cupped his chin and made him look at her. Naruto, she spoke. Know that what you did today was not your fault. I understand that this is the first time you have inflicted pain on another person like that. I know that it is hard to deal with. I know that it is frightening. I went through it too. You need to know that as a shinobi, you will have to hurt others and kill to do your job, to defend your land and its people. What you did today was not wrong. It was merely the first step on a journey you must take, a hard step, but a necessary one. As she said all this, she looked into Naruto's eyes and saw that he was, indeed, listening to her. She saw her words were having some comforting effect on the boy. Remember when I told you about the burden of power? She asked him. Receiving a nod from the boy, she continued. This is part of that burden. You had the power to harm that man, to defeat him in battle. It was your duty to do your best in the fight, and so when you saw an opportunity to win, you took it. That is power. Had your opponent had more power, he would not have lost. Had he not underestimated you, he would not have been injured. The fault lies with him, not you. Others may come to resent you for this incident, they may go to greater lengths to shun you, for now they have seen a taste of your true power. But remember, I will never shun you. I will never hate or fear you. There is one final thing I wish to tell you about Naruto. Today, your actions made me very proud. When Azula said those last words, Naruto's eyes widened. He felt a mix of emotions, happiness, guilt, sorrow, anger, and fear all bottled up into one great blob of indecipherable feeling. When he heard Azula say she was proud of him, he reacted on pure instinct, unable to truly form a coherent thought. He tackled her onto the bed, burying his face into the older girl's chest. Sobs racked his body as he held onto the Fire Nation princess for dear life, wanting nothing more than to hold the girl and be held by her, until this pain went away, and as Azula wrapped her arms around him, she was content to let him. They lay there together in each other's arms until sleep took them. Azula woke before dawn, as her internal clock told her it was time to wake up and eat before going through her and Naruto's morning training. She looked down and saw that Naruto was lying next to her, his arms wrapped around her and his face pressed firmly into her chest. Obviously the two had not drifted away from one another after falling asleep in each other's arms the night before. Azula smiled a little bit, remembering the events of the previous day. It had been more successful than she could have ever hoped for. Not only had she been able to determine that Naruto had a crush on her, but she had also been able to bond with the boy. By being there for him and comforting him after the incident with Mizuki, she had gained more of his trust and affection. She felt Naruto tighten his grip on her in his sleep, making her smirk. It was amusing that they had stayed like this all night long. Not because they were cuddled together, but because it was Naruto who was doing the cuddling. Every night before it was Azula who had latched onto the boy in her sleep, just like the first night, and refused to release the boy until she woke up. She no longer chased him around with fire when she woke up either. She saw no point in repeatedly terrifying the young boy every time she used him as her own personal living stuffed animal. She had instead made him promise never to tell anyone about her cuddling habit, promising great pain if he broke that promise. Normally she would have woken Naruto so that they could eat and begin his training, but she felt that after his display yesterday, that he had earned the right to sleep in, if only for today. Besides, she had to admit that the younger boy looked adorable right now, making even the Fire Nation princess get a warm fuzzy feeling deep within her. She would never tell that to anyone though. So for now she would let Naruto lay in her arms and sleep in. Besides, if her plans for the future worked out, she suspected she would have to get used to situations like this. Bright morning sunlight flooded through the window of Naruto's bedroom, shining directly on his face. He groaned and turned his face into his pillow to escape the glare and try to drift off back to sleep. He was especially tired today, and his pillow was extra comfy. He also noted that it was warm, very warm. He opened his eyes and blinked. He realized that his pillow was not a pillow at all, rather it was Azula's bust that his head now laid upon. He briefly wondered if the older girl had rolled over to him and grabbed him as she had done most nights, before he remembered that it was actually him who had snuggled into her the previous evening. He also remembered why he had been so eager to be held by the girl. All the pain and guilt of the incident with Mizuki came rushing back. With those feelings came something else as well, the memory of Azula's words to him before the two had fallen asleep. She had said that he had made her proud, and that he had done well, he had made her happy. That thought brought forth a feeling of joy and warmth to Naruto, warmth that served to fight off the guilt and sadness he had felt for hurting Mizuki. He took a deep breath, smiling to himself, and was tempted to drift back into sleep when he heard Azula speak. "Naruto, how long do you intend on using me as a pillow?" The girl's voice made him jerk backwards, separating himself from the princess. He looked at her, not really sure how she would react to the situation. Sure, she had been cuddling close to him at night for the past 2 weeks, but that was when she was the one initiating it, not him. He knew that the situation wasn't really all that different despite that fact, but Naruto had learned from the girls in his class that logic didn't always apply in the minds of girls in these situations. It seemed his fears were unfounded, however, as he looked up and saw Azula looking right back at him, an amused smirk on her face. "My, that was a fast reaction," she said. "Could it be that you're embarrassed about using me as a pillow, Naruto? You don't have to be too embarrassed, you know, we're going to be doing that far more often if we get married eventually." "Azula, it's not nice to tease me like that," Naruto whined, blushing a rather impressive shade of red. If it was possible, Azula's smirk grew. "Now Naruto, what makes you think I'm just teasing you? I wasn't lying when I told that boy yesterday that it's normal for relatives in the royal line to marry each other." When Naruto heard this, he blushed even more and started stammering, trying to form words. Eventually his mouth caught up with his brain and he managed to squeak out a sentence. "You mean we're going to get married?" The older girl laughed at his embarrassment and said, "I don't think we're going to be married just yet, Naruto. You're far too young, and I don't feel the need to become a wife so soon in my life. But it is possible that we could marry eventually. As the heir to the throne, I will need to wed and produce a child to take the throne after I take it, and no serious suitors have come forward as of yet. Of course you would have to prove yourself worthy of being my husband. I won't spend my life with a weakling, I won't give my love to just anyone." Naruto's mind reeled. Marriage to Azula was actually a possibility. It was hard to wrap his head around the idea. He knew he liked the older girl, and she had proven several times within the short time that he had known her that she was one of the few people who really cared for him. She had trained him, she comforted him when he was sad. she had helped him in so many ways. Her very presence had helped him, giving him a friend and someone to share his life with. Naruto loved having Azula in his life. She had been the best thing to happen to him since well ever. She had told him that she would have to leave for her home eventually in the first week they had lived together, a fact that he dreaded. Azula had made his life so much better, he couldn't imagine what it would be like to watch her leave and never return. He had been hoping and thinking of ways to make her stay, but he couldn't come up with anything. But now she had told him that the chance of marrying her was very real, and people who got married were always together no matter what. Well, that's what he heard in stories and from Gigi anyway. So it would make sense that if he could get Azula to marry him, she would stay in Konoha with him. But that thought Naruto began to form a plan. Azula watched as her words sunk into Naruto's mind, knowing that he was beginning to wonder at the possibilities of future marriage. While she didn't think that she would be able to convince him to leave his home with such a simple suggestion, she knew that it would sow the seeds for later. If she calculated correctly, it would also make him strive to become stronger and seek approval in her eyes, which would further strengthen his bond and devotion to her. She almost hoped it would take a long while for the Hokage's shinobi to find a way to get her home, after all it wouldn't do to leave such a fine weapon here. Azula could already see her plan coming to fruition, as visions of her being crowned as the Empress of the Four Nations, with Naruto standing by her side, acting as her guard and slaughtering her enemies, filled her mind. The Fire Nation princess was brought from her fantasy when she noticed Naruto's clock out of the corner of her eye. Seeing that Naruto only had an hour or so to get to the academy, she got out of bed and walked to the door of the bedroom. Turning to Naruto, she said, "Get dressed and meet me in the kitchen. You still need to eat before you attend your classes." But that she turned and walked to her room to get dressed. Once she had gotten into a fresh change of clothes, she walked into the kitchen and proceeded to get herself a bowl of cereal. Cereal in and of itself was a food she found rather strange. It was a breakfast food made up of grain and flavoring, served cold in milk. This was completely different from the food in the Fire Nation. Their all breakfasts were served hot, in fact most food was served hot. It was the Fire Nation after all, hot food was to be expected. Despite its differences, however, she found that she had grown rather fond of cereal. Maybe it was because of all the sugar that was in it. Azula always did have a bit of a sweet tooth. The dark-haired girl was brought out of her musings on the food in front of her when Naruto walked into the kitchen. Setting her bowl down, she watched as he got his own breakfast. When he sat down at the table beside her, she turned to him. "Naruto," she said, "I have a favor to ask of you." The blonde boy blinked. "Do you need a favor?" he asked, clearly wondering what she could need that he could help with. "Yes," she said. "When we work on your firebending next, I want you to teach me how to use some of your ninjutsu." Naruto gaped at her. "You want me to teach you? Couldn't you ask Gigi for help with this? I'm sure he could find you a good teacher." Azula shook her head. "I could, but I don't think I would feel comfortable doing so. I don't really know anyone in the village aside from you, and I would have a hard time trusting anyone. Besides, I'm sure you will be a great teacher." The truth was that she didn't think the Hokage would actually help her to learn ninjutsu. All the conversations that the two had held up till now seemed to indicate that he would rather her remain ignorant of any technique she could learn or use. Azula could understand why. She was an outside force within the walls of the village, and she held no loyalty to Konoha or its inhabitants. Teaching her ninjutsu would be counterproductive to ensuring the village's safety. That said, if Naruto were to teach her, it would be easier to get away with. Everything she had learned about him so far stated that he was towards the bottom of his class in grades and skill, so no one would take the idea of him teaching her seriously. Even if the Hokage found out about him teaching her, he would likely assume that he wouldn't be able to teach her well. Even if that assumption was correct, some knowledge was better than none in Azula's eyes. "Well, okay," Naruto said. "I guess I can try to teach you. I'll ask Iruka-sensei for pointers," he exclaimed. "No. I don't think that's a good idea. He would tell the Hokage, and then he would ask me why I didn't come to him about it, and I'll be forced to tell him I didn't trust anyone, and I'll be embarrassed." "You don't want me to be embarrassed, do you, Naruto-kun?" she asked, doing her best to look cute and adding the kun honorific for extra effect. She was pleased when she saw Naruto blush slightly and vigorously shake his head. "Good, then it will be our little secret," she said happily. "Now finish your breakfast and head off to the academy. When you return we will resume your bending training, and you can begin teaching me." She saw the boy take on a saddened look when she mentioned the academy. "What's wrong?" she asked, although she thought she had a good idea as to what it was. "It's just that I'm worried about what the other kids will think of me after what I did to Mizuki. I know you said that is part of the burden of power, but I don't want them to hate me if I can help it. I've already laughed a lot and picked on, what if they treat me worse now?" Azula sighed. She would have to get rid of the boy's insecurities sooner or later. It wouldn't have to have a powerful man fighting for her and protecting her if he was worried about the feelings of those around him. For now though, it presented yet another opportunity to get closer to him. You just said that they laughed at you and picked on you, does it really matter whether they fear you? I can tell you right now, Naruto, that many if not all of your classmates will have some form of fear of you now. In my experience, this is actually a good thing. That fear will make them wary of you, meaning they will be less inclined to mock or bully you now that they have seen your power. Naruto seemed to consider her words. So in a way, fear means respect. But you respect me and you don't fear me, he said, sounding confused. Azula smirked. It's a different kind of respect. I respect you as a person, as someone who also holds power like you do. The respect they will have for you is like the respect that prey has for a predator. Understand? Naruto nodded but had a pensive look, showing that he was still thinking on her words. After a few moments he looked up and gave the dark-haired girl a smile. Thanks, Azula Haim. I'll try to think of what you said. I'm not really sure that I understand all of it just yet, but it does help a bit. Anyway, I'm off to the academy. But that the boy turned and walked out the apartment door. Azula smiled to herself, thinking about how the boy ate up every word she said. Barring any major changes in the way the boy's life was going and how those around him treated him, she could see no reason why her plan would fail. Well, there was the Hokage to consider. The old man was still a potential problem, and after yesterday's display, he would watch her closely. She knew she would have to find some way to throw off his suspicions, but she had no way of doing so at the moment, so she would have to keep an eye out for an opportunity to do so. For now though, she had a less pressing but more immediate problem to deal with. The same problem that had plagued her since the Hokage had given her the translation scroll, writing this world's language. Grabbing a brush, some ink, and several pieces of paper, Azula sat down at the table and began trying to copy the characters in the scroll to paper. Sasuke Uchiha sat at a desk by the window of the classroom, with his hands folded together in front of his face. He had arrived earlier than any of the other students, in an effort to avoid the more enthusiastic members of his so-called fan club. He was, in deep thought, brooding one might say, something he did rather often. This time, however, his mind was occupied by something other than his thoughts of vengeance on his brother. This time his mind was dwelling on Naruto Uzumaki. When Sasuke first met the boy, he thought he was loud, brash, and talentless. That had changed when his clan had been wiped out. Naruto had been one of the very few people who didn't come to him with empty sympathy. Naruto treated him as a rival, as a goal to overcome, and yet he knew that the blonde understood his pain more than other people in their age group. At first Sasuke wondered if Naruto could be a friend, an ally, someone to rely on. Those thoughts were quickly dashed though as he realized that Naruto was still incredibly weak. He couldn't afford to have weak friends or allies when he was going to kill Itachi. He had placed Naruto in the category of interesting, but not really worth noticing after that. Then yesterday had happened, and all of Sasuke's previous judgments of the boy came into question. Naruto had done decently well on his weapons test, and had been fairly competent at answering questions in class. While both of these facts were a change from the norm, they wouldn't have been all that special by themselves. It was the Uzumaki's match against Mizuki that had gotten Sasuke's attention. Naruto had not only won against them, but had seriously wounded him as well. That was impressive, that showed progress. No one had been able to beat an instructor in combat since Itachi had attended the academy, a fact that held significance. Did this mean Naruto was a genius of the same caliber as Itachi? Did he simply get lucky yesterday? Even if that was the case, he had clearly gained more power. What of the girl who had arrived and left with Naruto? Who was she? Was she the one responsible for his growth? The girl had clearly radiated power and confidence. She also gave off another feeling, one Sasuke couldn't quite identify. According to the Hokage, she was a visiting princess and was a distant relative of Naruto. Did that make Naruto a possible heir to a nation? There were too many questions, and the only way he would gain answers was to confront Naruto himself. With that in mind, Sasuke decided he would take the first chance he got to talk to the blonde. As the classroom filled with more and more people, Sasuke kept an eye on the door, watching for Naruto. His view was soon obstructed by several girls who came over to ask him for dates, which he shot down by giving them glares. The girls looked slightly dejected and took their own seats, after what seemed like an eternity, the boy he had been waiting for entered the room. Sasuke watched as Naruto took a seat in the back of the room, noticing that several students moved to get out of his path, looks of uncertainty and fear on their faces. Clearly many of the kids in their class had been frightened by his fight with Mizuki. It disgusted the Uchiha. They were here to learn to be ninja, to learn to fight and kill. They would have to see and do things like that a lot in the future. Maybe once, years before, Sasuke would have been frightened as well, but then his brother had made him watch as he murdered their clan. That had been far more terrifying and traumatizing than what Naruto had done. Sasuke was about to get up and go talk to him when Iruka walked into the room and called for everyone's attention. "Settle down everyone, settle down." Haruka said, prompting everyone to get in their seats. Now, as you all know, there was an accident during one of the spars yesterday resulting in Mizuki-sensei's hospitalization. He will be fine, however, and should be able to make a quick recovery though. That said, he won't be joining us for at least another few weeks. I also want you all to know that this was an accident and that you will need to get used to events like this. It is part of being a shinobi. Sasuke could tell the teacher was trying to keep the class from shunning Naruto any further, but he doubted it would work. Based on how the blonde had been treated in past years and how many of the students now looked at him with fear in their eyes, he guessed that any chance the Uzumaki had of being treated normally had vanished. His attention was drawn back to Haruka as the lessons began for that day. The scar-faced man lectured the class for what seemed like forever, occasionally calling on students to answer questions and asking for input. Finally, he announced that it was time for lunch break and released the students to go eat. The students started shuffling around, getting out packed lunches and walking over to their friends. Sasuke saw a few girls starting to walk over to him, no doubt asking him to eat with them. Before they could reach him, however, he stood up and walked towards the back of the class. He stopped in front of Naruto's desk and he saw the blonde look up at him with a puzzled look on his face. There was a tension in the room as the students watched the two, wondering what was happening. Sasuke smirked on the inside. They were all probably thinking he was going to try to fight Naruto. Well, then this would be a nice surprise. Hey. Want to sit with me for lunch? Sasuke asked the boy and took great pleasure in the gasps of jealousy and outrage his fangirls gave. Oh, how he loves tormenting them. Azula felt like jumping and shouting for joy, and had she not been raised as she probably would have. She had done it, she had finally gotten the characters of this world's language down. She had written them all successfully, multiple times. She would continue to practice, of course, but for now she was happy that they looked the way they were supposed to. Despite the fact that she wasn't leaping all over the place in joy, she still felt she deserved a reward, so with that in mind, she headed out the door of the apartment and into the village. Within half an hour she was sitting on a stool in Ichiraku's, happily devouring her 5th bowl of ramen. Ever since Naruto had introduced the heavenly food to her, she had resolved to try every type of ramen that Ichiraku had to offer. While she wanted to eat there every day, Azula realized that eating too much ramen was probably not good for her, so she had to moderate the number of times she ate at the ramen stand. That didn't stop her from ordering 6 or 7 bowls every time she went there. No sane person could blame her for that, it was just so good. In her mind, Azula vaguely wondered if she should give Naruto some sort of medal when they returned to the Fire Nation as a reward for giving her this amazing food. The dark-haired girl watched as AM placed a 6th bowl of ramen in front of her and resisted the urge to drool. Just as she was about to start devouring the food, she caught movement out of the corner of her eye. Turning her head, she saw the same cat mask Anbu that had been her guide and escort on her first day in the village. Azula suddenly got the feeling she wouldn't be able to finish her ramen. It was a bad feeling. "Ah, Nico-san, I don't suppose you're here to enjoy some ramen?" Azula said, knowing full well that the female Anbu wanted something else. "No, I'm afraid not. Hokage-sama wishes to speak with you immediately," the masked woman replied. Azula sighed. "Do I have time to finish my ramen?" "Hokage-sama wishes to see you immediately," the Anbu said. Azula almost considered ignoring that and finishing her ramen anyway, but common sense overcame her desire for the heavenly food and she stood up. Throwing some money on the counter, she called out to AM. "AM-san, I have to leave. I left the payment on the counter." Turning to the cat-masked woman, she said. "Okay, Nico-san, take me to the Hokage." Naruto sat under a tree next to Sasuke. The two both had their lunches in front of them, but neither had taken a bite yet. When the Uchiha had invited him to eat lunch with him, Naruto had been as surprised as the rest of the class. He didn't know what he had expected when the dark-haired boy had approached him, but this wasn't it, especially after how the rest of the class treated him. "Hey," Naruto said, breaking the silence. "Why did you want to eat with me? You've never shown any signs that you wanted to be friends with me or anyone for that matter." Sasuke looked over at him. "Because of what you did yesterday. Up until now I haven't had a reason to talk to anyone. I have to avenge my clan and then rebuild it. I don't have time to have fun and hang out with people. I don't mind having friends, allies, but everyone else is too weak. They would be a liability in my quest, not an asset. I need friends who can help me avenge my clan, not weaklings. Until yesterday I thought you were weak, but you proved otherwise. I guess I'm curious as to what changed." Naruto blinked at that. Sasuke hadn't been making friends because he thought they were weak. He would have done anything for friends, no matter who or how strong they were. The Uchiha's mindset seemed crazy to him. But at the same time it fit in, a little, with what Azula had told him. Power respects power seems to be the concept here. "So now that you think I'm strong, you want to be friends?" Naruto asked, feeling rather angry that the Uchiha hadn't thought him worth the time of day before because he had thought he was weak. I don't know if friends is the right word. Sasuke said. In time maybe we would be friends, but right now I want to get to know you. You're interesting, you beat them in combat. That means you're stronger than anyone else we know in our age group. I don't know if we would be friends or rivals. Either way I feel you have something to teach me, something I can learn from. Even if we end up hating each other, you're someone who I would want to keep tabs on. You want to learn from me? If you're talking about my fire bending, then you can forget it. That's a family thing. Only Azula and I can learn it. Sasuke nodded. That isn't necessarily what I meant, but yes I had hoped I could learn those fire techniques. But if they're family techniques then I won't pry. As someone who comes from a clan, I know how important family are. Naruto narrowed his eyes. Then if not that, then what did you mean? He asked. I thought maybe we could spar and train together sometime. Even if you can't teach me any, I can improve my own skills by fighting against you. The same goes for you. We're both strong and by training with each other we can only become stronger. Naruto thought about that. It made sense, after all he had gotten quite a bit stronger by training with Azula, maybe Sasuke could help him too. He also noticed that Sasuke didn't seem afraid of him like the other children had been. In fact, if he was telling the truth, his fight against Mizuki had prompted the Uchiha to reach out to him. Could he be someone else who would accept him, like Azula had? Could he gain another friend? He was brought out of his thoughts when the bell rang. Sasuke stood up and looked down at him. Looks like lunch is over. You don't have to answer me now, but give it some thought. It would help us both in the long run. Naruto watched the Uchiha walk towards the academy and stood up for himself. He noticed with a little irritation that he hadn't eaten any of his lunch because he had been so busy thinking about what the Uchiha had said. Sighing, he headed back to class, knowing he would have to resign himself to being hungry and bored for the rest of the day, rather than just bored. Azula entered the Hokage's office for the second time in less than 24 hours. She wondered what the old leader wanted this time. She guessed that she would find out soon enough though. You called for me, Hokage-sama? She asked as she entered the room. She noticed that the two of them were not alone. Standing in front of the Hokage's desk was a tall man wearing a green vest over a blue suit. She also saw that he wore a mask over the lower half of his face and one of his eyes. He also had spiky silver hair. Azula, come in. Yes, I did call for you. The Hokage said. We have several matters to discuss. And what would those be? She asked, wondering if he was going to bring up the incident with Mizuki again. I have 3 things I would like to talk to you about, 2 of them involving Naruto. Don't worry, it's not about what happened yesterday. Well, I'm not happy about what happened. I know that what's done is done, and punishing you won't change it. That said, please try to prevent such things in the future. I still want to talk to Naruto myself about what happened, but that can wait for a while. I see. The girl said. Then what is it you wish to discuss? Well, first off, I'd like you to meet Hada Kakashi, the man in charge of leading the ninjutsu experiments regarding getting you home. I thought you might want to know a little about what we're doing and how we are doing it. Yo. The silver-haired man said, raising a hand in greeting. Annoyed that the man gave her such an aloof greeting, Azula neglected to give a bow to the man and simply said. Nice to meet you, Haddock-san. Can you tell me what progress you have made so far and if you have an estimated time frame to get me home? The man put a hand up to his chin. We haven't made much progress at all yet, we're still working on studying others that involve or may involve interdimensional travel. As for a time frame, I have absolutely no idea. Could be months, could be years, maybe even decades. Azula was momentarily stunned. Decades. It could take decades for her to get home. She had expected it would take a long time, after all the lost prince had never made it back, but she assumed that he hadn't had the same resources to help him like this village did. After all, he had only been taken in by one clan, hardly a match for the resources and knowledge a settlement like Konoha would have. Of course Azula knew that even with all those resources it might take a long time, even years, but she never assumed it could take a decade or more. Why? She asked, finally finding her voice. Why would it take so long? Well, there is a lot that goes into it, Kakashi said. Creating is dangerous at the best of times, even when we're not trying to bend space and time or make a door between dimensions. We have to find a way to mold our chakra into doing such a thing first. Then we would have to find a safe way to make sure we were actually connecting to another dimension. Even then we would have to confirm it was the right dimension. After that we would have to make sure the way was stable and wouldn't collapse on you. We would also have to make sure we were opening the portal in a safe area, wouldn't want you to be stuck on the bottom of the ocean, dropped from 1,000 feet in the sky, or be crushed under a mountain, now would we? Azula sighed. She hadn't thought about things like that before. If all that went into the process, then she really could be here for decades. If that was the case, she might as well just stay here and make a life here. No. She wouldn't think like that. She couldn't think like that. She was the princess of the Fire Nation. She was the daughter of Fire Lord Azai. She was born to be a ruler. She would return home, she would become Fire Lord, and she would conquer her world. She would do this, even if it took 1,000 years. No. She said, no, we wouldn't want that at all. Thank you for explaining the process to me, Haddock-san. I will try to be patient from now on. You're welcome. But remember, I'm just the leader of the ninjutsu team. There's a team working on a way to get you home as well. I suspect they will have more luck than my team. I see. Azula said. Turning back to the Hokage, she asked, what are the other things you wish to discuss, Hokage-sama? You said they involve Naruto. The aged shinobi breathed out a stream of smoke from his pipe before replying. Yes. I'm almost certain that Naruto hasn't told you yet, but his birthday is this week. Azula blinked. Naruto's birthday was this week. That was something she didn't know, but why did the Hokage need to talk to her about that? That's when she remembered that the demon that had attacked Konoha, the same one sealed away within the young boy, had attacked the night he was born. So it wasn't just his birthday, it was the anniversary of the demon's attack. I see you recognize the significance of that. The Hokage said. Good. Every year we hold the Kyuubi festival to celebrate the demon's defeat and honor those we lost. It is a time of revelry and mourning, so many people will be partying and drinking. They will also hold the hatred and sorrow of that night in the forefront of their minds. Azula saw where this was going. You're worried that some of the villagers may try to attack Naruto. She said. When the Hokage gave a nod, she asked, has he ever been attacked before? Twice before. The Hokage said. Both times happened within a year of his birth. I had the perpetrators executed and announced that anyone else attempting to harm the boy would suffer the same fate. Since then the villagers have ignored the boy, treated him like he doesn't exist or have ridiculed him, but no one has tried to harm him. This year may be different, however, because of his fight with Mizuki. Until now the boy has been thought of as a failure by many, they didn't see him as a threat. Now he has come close to killing a while still in the academy, this has raised fear and suspicion in the minds of many. That fear mixed with alcohol and excitement could possibly lead some of the more foolish people in the village to start something. It's part of the reason I was so angry with what happened yesterday. Azula narrowed her eyes in thought. She knew that alcohol and large groups of people lead to poor decisions, mix in a little fear and grief, and you have a recipe for violent stupidity. I will be ready to defend him at a moment's notice. I won't let any harm come to him, you have my word on that. I'm glad. The Hokage said. Truthfully, I suspect that the chance of anything happening is low, but it is still higher than it has been in a long time. I hope I won't have to remind anyone of the law the hard way, but I will if necessary. That said, if you can avoid any trouble it would be vastly helpful. Of course, Hokage-sama, I will do my best. Now what is the other matter you wish to discuss regarding Naruto? Azula couldn't be sure, but for a moment she thought she saw a smirk of pure vengeful glee cross the Hokage's face. Of course, by the time she registered what she thought she saw, the old man's face was blank. Well, as I mentioned, Naruto will be turning 11 this week. The Hokage said. I have been observing Naruto for some time now, and I have noticed that he is beginning to show an interest in girls. Now this isn't unexpected, many children display interest in the opposite gender around this age, often declaring themselves to be partner and partner, or pretending to marry each other. It's all fun most of the time, and they hold no physical attraction to each other for the most part. But Naruto is in Uzumaki. The Uzumaki are known for longevity and having boundless energy. This extra life force causes several changes in the Uzumaki, for example they mature faster. Azula wasn't sure why, but she had a sinking feeling in her stomach all of a sudden. Something in the Hokage's voice held a sense of mirth, and she could see that despite his wearing a mask, Kakashi seemed to be smiling. Meaning what? She asked. Meaning that Naruto is going through the beginning stages of puberty, despite his relatively young age. So it is up to you as his closest relative and legal guardian to give him the talk. When Azula heard this sentence she did something rather un-Azula-like. She blushed. It wasn't a large blush, but it was definitely noticeable. What was more noticeable was the slight stutter in her voice when she spoke next. What do you mean I have to give him the talk? She asked. She had known that the topic of sex would have to be brought up eventually, much of the plan involved future sexual interactions between herself and Naruto, but she had in all her calculating forgotten that he didn't even know what sex was yet. She remembered her own talk that her mother had given her. It was one of the most awkward and embarrassing moments in her life. Her mother had given her the talk when she was only 10, shortly before she left the palace. The only comfort that Azula had from the memory was the knowledge that her mother had been equally embarrassed. Now she had to give the same talk to Naruto. I mean, you have to explain sexual intercourse to Naruto. The Hokage said, his eyes sparkling with mischievous glee, clearly enjoying the girl's flustered state. It can't be that hard to explain, I'm sure, unless of course you don't know how it's done. Azula's face grew a little more red. Of course I know how. I just don't know how I'm supposed to explain this. It was at this moment that Kakashi spoke up. I believe this might help," he said, pulling out a little orange book. He opened the book, flipping through a few pages before handing it to Azula. "Here, just have him read this. That will solve the problem." Azula blinked. Would a book help? How? Azula looked at the page the book had been opened to and started reading. She read the first sentence, then the second, then the third, then Kakashi's book went up in blue flames and turned to ash. The masked man gave a cry and fell to his knees, reaching down the pile of ash that now lay on the floor of the Hokage's office. "Why?" he cried. "Why would you burn such a wonderful work of art? You're evil. Pure evil." Ignoring the man, Azula took a deep breath and tried to regain her composure. Looking back at the Hokage, she said, "Okay. I can give Naruto the talk, but does it really have to be so soon? The sooner the better." The old shinobi said. "Oh, and please don't go into too much detail, I don't want to traumatize the boy." "Believe me," said Azula, "you don't have to worry about that. Now if that is all, may I take my leave, Hokage-sama?" "Yes, you may go," the elder man said. Azula gave a slight bow to the man and then hurried out of the office as fast as possible, leaving a chuckling Hokage and a still sobbing Kakashi behind her. Naruto sighed in relief when class was released for the day. It had been the worst day he had in a long time. True to expectations, many of his classmates now looked at him with fear in their eyes and avoided him. A few of the students, like Kiba, had come up to him and told him they thought his firebending was cool and asked if they could learn it, and they all left disappointed when he told them that they could not. Otherwise, Sasuke had been the only person to actually try to talk to him. He'd even answered a question wrong on purpose, given the most ridiculous answer he could think of, to get a smile or a chuckle out of someone in the class. No one laughed. Azula's words had proven true, power makes fear. Naruto knew that he would always be feared by his classmates now, and there was, likely, nothing he could do to change that. Still, Sasuke had shown that power earned respect as well, once again proving Azula right. The boy was, now trying to reach out to Naruto, offering to train with him and talk to him. Naruto thought about the Uchiha's offer. If he was able to train with the top student in class, his grades and strength would undoubtedly improve even further. He could combine that training with his training from Azula and grow even stronger. That would impress the girl, he thought. Maybe he could get Sasuke to help him find a way to teach Azula how to use chakra as well. He wouldn't Sasuke, that's what they were doing, but he figured if he brought it up in a roundabout way, he could discover a way to teach Azula the basics. And if everything went well, he could end up having another friend. A new friend that wouldn't be afraid of him. That would be awesome. He couldn't wait to tell Azula about this. He bet she would be thrilled to learn he was close to making a new friend. With that thought in mind, the young boy rushed out of the academy grounds and through the village towards the apartment he shared with the Fire Nation princess. Naruto's nightmare. Naruto walked into the academy, ignoring the looks he got from everyone he passed. He made his way through the halls until he reached the door of his classroom. Sliding the door open, he noticed that the room was completely empty except for one person. Standing at the front of the room was a man with silver hair and wearing the standard outfit of blue suit and a green vest. Upon seeing the man, Naruto's face lit up in a smile. "Mizuki-sensei," he called out happily. "I'm so happy that you're okay." The boy's face fell a little after he said that. "I'm really sorry about what happened during the sparring match, Mizuki-sensei. I never meant to hurt you, please don't hate me, please forgive me," he said, bowing to the teacher. He felt a hand rest on the top of his head. He looked up to see the instructor smiling down at him. "Of course I'll forgive you, Naruto. You're my student after all, and I know it was just an accident. But I expect you to make up for your mistake," the silver-haired man said. "I promise I will," Naruto shouted. "I'll do anything to make it up for it." Mizuki's smile grew as Naruto said those words. "Good. Then to make amends, you're going to have to take this test," he said, handing Naruto 3 pieces of paper. Naruto looked down at the papers and saw that they each had questions on the front and back. He also noticed that the questions looked to be extremely hard. Now Naruto will sit down and do the test. "I'm going to head out, but I want you to make sure you answer each question. You aren't allowed to go home until you finish it." Once he said that, the silver-haired man left the room. Naruto sat down at one of the desks and began to answer the questions. It took him the better part of an hour, but he finally managed to complete all the questions. He was about to turn the test in when he noticed that he had left one paper undone. He could have sworn that he had done all the questions, but nevertheless he grabbed the paper and completed it. Sighing at having finished it, he looked back up and saw 2 more blank papers. Okay. That was just weird. He grabbed the papers a little more hesitantly and powered through them. Once he was done with them, he picked up a stack of papers and dropped them onto the desk at the front of the room. He began to walk towards the door when he noticed something out of the corner of his eye. Turning to face whatever it was, he saw a large stack of papers sitting on one of the desks. He walked over to the papers and picked one up. He saw, to his horror, that it was a continuation of the test. Suddenly he heard the sound of papers landing on wood and turned to see that stacks of paper were falling out of nowhere and landing all over the room. What is going on? Naruto asked himself. How are all these test papers appearing? Is this some kind of… Yes it is. A dark voice said. Naruto looked all around for the source of the voice but couldn't see anything. I'm right here, the voice said, drawing his attention to the piece of paper in his hand. He watched in confusion as the ink from the question on the page began to gather and form a face on the paper. This is indeed a dot, the paper face said. Your sensei, in order to get revenge on you, used a forbidden to summon us from another world. But he underestimated just how powerful we truly were, and now we will use our power to overrun your village and then conquer this world. Naruto laughed. Yeah, right. How could pieces of paper conquer anything? The paper let out a hoarse, raspy laugh. Just look for yourself. Look out the window. Naruto walked to one of the windows in the classroom and saw that papers were falling from the sky by the hundreds and were landing on people, crushing them under their weight. Oh no. Naruto yelled and ran out of the classroom and quickly made it to the exit of the academy. As he stepped out of the building, he saw the Hokage walking towards him. He also saw a large group of papers about to fall on the aged leader. Did you watch out? Naruto yelled. But it was too late. The papers hit the old man and buried him completely. No. Naruto cried. He had to get help and fast. He quickly ran through the streets, and as he did so he saw people being swallowed up and crushed by the falling papers everywhere around him. He made it to the Ichiraku ramen stand in time to see Tuchi and Aim cry out for help as they too were engulfed in the stacks of paper. Not them too. Naruto cried out. Naruto, what's going on? Asked a voice next to him. He turned to see Azula standing next to him, looking confused. Azula, Haim. The boy cried, happy to see the dark-haired girl alright. We're under attack from weird paper monsters from another world. The older girl frowned at this statement. I see. We will have to show them our power then, won't we? Come with me, Naruto, we will begin a counterattack. She said. As she turned to go, however, a giant hand made of paper appeared and pulled her into an enormous pile of the things, bigger than any other stack that had appeared so far. Naruto's eyes widened in horror. No. He screamed and fell to knees, overcome by despair as the person he had come to care for the most perished before his very eyes. The paper in his hand laughed once more. All your friends are dead, and even your Hokage is gone now, boy. You should just resign yourself to your own death. Naruto's hands began shaking as uncontrollable rage overtook him. No. What? The paper asked. I said no. I'm not letting you get away with this. I'm going to stop you and avenge everyone. You? Revenge? Ha. You're just an academy student, who do you think can get revenge on us? Naruto felt his body heat grow as he summoned fire from deep within him, bending the flames to will and calling them forth into the palm of his hands, causing the demon paper to begin shrieking with pain. Who am I? I am fire, I am death. Now burn away with the rest of your kind. With that statement, Naruto sent fire into a stack of papers to his left and then another to his right. He made his way through the streets of Konoha, walking at a slow, deliberate pace, making sure to burn every single paper he came across. He continued like this until he came to the Hokage Tower. Once he reached the tower, he made his way to its roof and summoned a ball of fire bigger than any he ever had. He then threw it down at the village below him. Naruto knew that this act would destroy the village and himself, but it would also wipe out all the demon papers and prevent them from reaching the rest of the world. He braced himself for the burning shock wave that would come from his blast, waiting to join his friends in death. Naruto jolted awake, breathing heavily. He sat there for a few moments, catching his breath before looking around. He was in his room. He was in his bed. Azula was next to him, still sound asleep, although she shifted in her sleep to adjust her grip on the boy's arm. Naruto sighed in relief. It was just a dream. That was the weirdest nightmare I have ever had. This is what happens when I don't have ramen before bed. I am never skipping out on night ramen again ever. But that said, he lay back down and snuggled into Azula. Beings from another world coming to this one. What a silly idea like that could ever happen. He closed his eyes and drifted off to sleep once more. Azula paced up and down the living room of the apartment, her eyes to the floor in front of her. Her mind was currently occupied by a daunting and seemingly insurmountable problem, namely the prospect of teaching Naruto Uzumaki about sex. The dark-haired girl knew that she would have to teach him about the act of reproduction sooner or later. Of course, it was, after all, essential to her plan. Essential or not, however, it was still a thoroughly embarrassing subject to talk about. Every part of her mind was currently trying to either find a suitable way to explain the process of sex to the boy or trying to find a way to successfully postpone the conversation. If she could, the girl would prefer to let the subject go until the boy was much older and then teach him about it only when it became a required step in their relationship. Any chance of that happening was destroyed when the Hokage ordered her to give the boy the talk though. Azula's eye twitched as she thought of the old man's smug look when he had given that order. She briefly entertained thoughts of how that smirk of his would look if the shinobi leader spontaneously combusted into blue flames. Azula felt herself chuckle darkly at that thought. Theoretical plots of revenge would have to wait, however, as she did in fact have to explain sex to the young blonde that she shared the apartment with. Maybe she could give him the same story that Fire Nation parents had told their children for generations when faced with this same problem. She would sit Naruto down, look him in the eyes, and with all the seriousness she could muster, she would explain that there was a palace in the sky, hidden by the clouds. Within this palace were all the babies in the world, and when a young couple were married, a great dragon would find the correct baby for the couple and bring it to them. Azula nodded to herself. Yes, that would work. Then she would swear Naruto to secrecy about the subject and tell the Hokage that she had accomplished her task. She could then avoid the whole issue until she was well and truly ready for it. Azula nodded to herself once more and said yes, that will work. What will work, Azula-Heim? Naruto asked, standing behind her. Azula jumped about a foot off the ground and gave a yelp of surprise. She had been so involved in her own thoughts that she hadn't heard the blonde boy walk into the apartment and up to her. Azula fought down the blush she felt trying to rise on her cheeks. Oh, it's nothing, Naruto. How was your day at the academy? Azula watched the boy's face gain a pensive look. It was alright, I guess. Most of the kids in my class seemed to be afraid of me, but they didn't tease or make fun of me. Azula nodded. That was exactly how she had expected things to be for the young boy. But I also think I may have found a friend, Naruto said excitedly. That statement made the older girl blink. What? She asked. Naruto smiled happily. Remember how you said that I would eventually find those who respected me for my power? Well, I think I may have found one today. Azula's eyes narrowed. Explain what happened, please, Naruto, she said, her voice taking a calm tone. Naruto launched into an explanation of his encounter with Sasuke, telling her what the boy had said and how he had wanted to train with Naruto. He also explained how Sasuke had treated him up until this point. By the end of Naruto's tale, Azula was certain of one thing: Sasuke Uchiha could be trouble. Azula had made the mistake of assuming that all of the children Naruto's age would be afraid of him. She hadn't counted on someone like Uchiha being part of the equation. When she had told Naruto that he would find those who would respect his power, she had said it was a way to console him and had hoped to provide those people in the form of herself, her father, and the Fire Nation as a whole. Yet, despite the odds, Naruto had managed to find such a person here in Konoha. The more bonds that Naruto formed within Konoha, the harder it would be to convince him to leave with her. Of course, Azula was under no delusions that she would be able to keep the boy from forming any bonds at all. When she first began to form this plan, she had known that she and Naruto would possibly be in Konoha for some time before they were able to leave to her world. In fact, her plan counted on the fact that she would have enough time to develop her own bond with the boy to a significant degree before they would have the opportunity to leave. In that same amount of time, it was expected for the boy to develop bonds of some sort with at least a few others. In light of what she had learned from Kakashi about interdimensional and how long she might be here, it was simply impossible, inconceivable really, for him not to form bonds with others. Azula had hoped to be able to limit those bonds and control them to some degree, however. This is the reason why she was so worried about the Uchiha boy. According to Naruto, the Uchiha was the top student in his class and was extremely popular with other members of the class, despite his lack of social interaction. Many of the girls in Naruto's class apparently idolized the boy, and if they saw their idol interacting with Naruto, there was a chance that they would overcome their fear of Naruto and approach him, as the Uchiha had done. This meant that Naruto would potentially form even more bonds than he otherwise would. Some of those bonds would possibly be formed with girls. Azula's entire plan involved Naruto bonding and eventually loving her. She had to be the only girl who he loved, who loved him, who could love him. If he suddenly formed bonds with other girls, then her whole plan was in potential danger. What was worse, she could do nothing to keep Naruto from befriending the Uchiha, not without raising red flags as to her intentions. If she forbade or tried to keep Naruto from being the boy's friend, he would want to know why, and she had no good excuse to provide him with. So she would have to let the two bond, even encourage it. She supposed she could monitor how their bond grew if she too befriended the Uchiha boy. Yes, that could work. If she was close to both of them, she could keep an eye on what people the Uchiha drew towards the two of them, specifically any girls. She would then be able to determine if the girls were getting close to Naruto in a romantic sense, and if they were, she would drive them off. Oh yes, she would do everything in her power to keep them from Naruto's heart. Spirits helped the ones who threatened her plans, for unimaginable torment and pain would be rained down upon them. Azula-Heim, are you okay? Naruto asked, worried and a slight amount of fear in his voice. Azula blinked, being brought out of her thoughts. Yes, everything is fine, she said. Why do you ask? Well, you have this really scary look on your face, and your hands are covered in fire," he said, pointing at her hands. Azula looked down in surprise to see that she had balled her hands into fists and summoned blue fire around them. She quickly let the flames dissipate and blinked. That was odd, she didn't usually lose control of herself like that. Was she really that angry that her plan was in danger? "Oh, sorry, I was just thinking about something that made me a little upset. Anyway, I think you should agree to train with the Uchiha, it will help you grow in strength, and having another ally can't hurt. I would like you to introduce him to me as well, I want to make sure he is being honest with you." Naruto's face quickly gained a smile at the fact that Azula seemed alright with him befriending Sasuke. "Okay," he said. Continuing in his happy mood, he asked, "So how did your day go, Azula-Heim?" Azula's mind was once again brought back to her meeting with the Hokage, and she fought down the slight blush that threatened to appear on her face. She looked down at the younger boy and thought about the task she had been given. While it would be easy and tempting to pass off the conversation or dodge it, it would not be helpful to anyone in the long run. "My day was eventful, Naruto," Azula said. This earned an inquisitive look from the boy, but he remained quiet and waited for her to continue. "You see, I was called to meet with the Hokage today. He wished to speak to me about several matters, two of which involve you." Naruto blinked. "Me? Yes, you. One of the topics was a task that I am to perform as your acting guardian," Azula said. "Tell me, Naruto, do you know where babies come from?" she asked, hoping that maybe, just maybe, he already knew. The younger boy's eyes squinted in concentration, as if trying to remember the answer to a question on a test. Finally, after what seemed like hours, but was really only moments, Naruto looked up at the girl and said nope. Azula felt that small ray of hope she had been holding on to vanish. "I see," she said. "Well then, let's go sit down and I will tell you where babies come from." She led him over to the kitchen table where they both took a seat across from each other, with Naruto looking at her attentively. Azula looked at the young boy and took a deep breath and prepared for the plunge into what would undoubtedly be one of the most awkward conversations she had ever had. "You see, Naruto, when boys and girls reach a certain age they begin to change." "Change?" he asked. "Like they look different?" "In some ways, perhaps," she said. "Now please refrain from asking any questions until I am done with the explanation." Naruto nodded in acknowledgement and Azula continued her talk. It took over half an hour to get the entire explanation of what changes happen to boys and girls, and then another half hour to inform the boy why they were relevant to where babies came from. Naruto's expression through the hour had gone through several phases. First, he had shown looks of attentiveness and thoughtfulness. Those had evolved into looks of disbelief and then slight horror. Finally, his face became a mask of red when she began to explain sex to him. By the end of the hour-long talk, the both of them were sitting rather quietly across from each other in various states of embarrassment. The moment of silence was broken when Naruto raised his hand, as if he were in a classroom. Azula-Heim, I have a question." "What is that, Naruto?" the princess asked. "So when you mentioned that we might get, married, does that mean that we will be doing that?" he asked, in a quiet and rather shy voice. Suddenly Azula found herself experiencing something completely new to her. She saw, in her mind, an older version of herself, laying on her bed in her room in the Fire Nation Palace, next to an older Naruto. Azula had never taken the time to really think about what the blonde would look like when he reached his late teens. She knew that he would likely be attractive, but she hadn't ever thought about the details of what that attractiveness would be like. Her subconscious apparently had, however, because the man in vision was, in one word, gorgeous. He was decidedly taller than her, had messy golden hair that was long enough to reach his jawline, and had deep soul-piercing blue eyes. His body was that of a bender who practiced regularly, that is to say, well-toned and muscular, but not bulgy or disgustingly big. He had slightly darker skin than the Naruto she knew, showing that he spent a lot of time in the sun, and it made the whisker marks on his cheeks stand out in a very interesting way. She watched a scene in her vision unfold as the older Naruto gently pushed her older self's hands above head using one hand and moved his other to steady himself as he leaned in towards her face. Just as his lips were about to reach hers, Azula managed to wrench herself from the vision and reality came crashing back to her. She felt her face burning all the way up to her ears and knew that she was sporting a heavy blush. She looked around and noticed Naruto staring at her with an expression that was half questioning and half nervous. Azula figured that he was probably waiting for an answer to the question that had summoned the vision she had briefly experienced. She cleared her throat softly before answering him. "Well, yes, Naruto. We would eventually do that," she said, avoiding the word sex and using that instead. "We would be expected to produce an heir, and as such we would need to do that. It is also an act that, I have been told, can strengthen the bond between two people who love each other." That was how her mother had put it anyway. "I see," the boy said, looking away slightly. Azula could swear she saw steam coming out of the blonde's ears. Well, in any case we have other issues to discuss as well. She said. Like what? Naruto asked quickly, happy to get away from the previous subject. Well, for example, the fact you have a birthday coming up. The girl answered. At the mention of his birthday, Naruto gained a rather forlorn look. His birthdays had never really been fun or even really resembled birthdays. To him they were just another day where people ignored him or scorned him. Truthfully, he preferred the scorn, at least then people acknowledged that he was there, that he existed. Many people ignored him all the time, but it was especially painful on his birthday. To have your very existence be disregarded, to be treated as if he wasn't there, was never there, on the day when his existence was supposed to be celebrated was something that truly left deep wounds on the child's mind. Azula watched Naruto carefully, gauging his reaction. After a few moments she decided on how best to handle the situation. She drew in her breath and put her best scowl on her face before saying, well, to tell the truth, I'm rather angry that you didn't tell me about it before. That got the boy's attention. He looked at her as if he had just been smacked. What? Why are you angry, Azula? He asked, worried he had done something to jeopardize his relationship with the dark-haired girl. Azula leaned back in her chair, folded her arms and closed her eyes. She sat there a moment, giving off her best I'm mad at you aura before speaking. Well, where I come from, it is a custom to celebrate the birthdays of those who are close to someone. I understand that such a tradition is also held here in Konoha. How am I supposed to celebrate your birthday if you don't tell me about it? She asked. Naruto was stunned. Wait, you're mad at me because you didn't know I had a birthday coming up and that meant you couldn't celebrate it? The princess opened one eye and looked at him. That is what I said, yes. She stated. When Naruto heard this, he hopped out of his chair, calmly walked around the table to Azula and gave her a hug. It wasn't a desperate hug like the one he had given her after his fight with Mizuki, but a warm and soft hug, one that was full of meaning and emotion. It was an embrace that showed all of his heart to the older girl. Thank you, Azula, he said quietly. You don't need to thank me. She answered. Like I said, it's a custom, something expected, everyone does it for those who are close to them. Still, thank you. Naruto said. Only Hokage Jiji, Iruka-sensei, and the Ichirokas have ever really celebrated my birthday. Now I have someone else who wants to do it too, it means a lot to me. Azula was genuinely surprised by his words. On the surface it was just a simple thank you, but there was also something deeper about it. She sensed a maturity in the words that she had not seen in the boy before. It was too expected, she guessed, that one did not live the life Naruto lived without growing up at least a little faster than other children. Even knowing that the intensity of the word struck something inside her, bringing forth a feeling of some sort. It was an alien emotion, something she could not readily identify, and she wasn't at all sure that she liked it. So rather than dwell on it, she changed the subject. Alright, that is enough of that. It is time to begin afternoon training. Also, I believe that we agreed that you would begin teaching me how to use chakra today as well. Azula said. Naruto let go of his embrace on the older girl and nodded. Right. I'm still not sure how much help I will be, but I'll try to get you the basics, Azula. It only took a few minutes for the two to reach the training ground down the street from where they lived. The small area had quickly become the place where two spent the majority of their time together. It was also one of the places where two were most often able to be alone. Azula was not sure if this was because the Hokage had ordered the other shinobi to avoid them while training, or if people simply avoided them due to Naruto's status as a pariah. For all she knew, it was simply an area that was overlooked for better, more suitable training areas. No matter what the reason was, it allowed the two of them to train and talk in a comfortable area that offered a small modicum of privacy. This time, the situation was a little different from normal, however, as instead of Azula giving Naruto explanations and training exercises, it was she who was doing the listening. She stood in front of the young boy, paying close attention to what he was saying. So far he had explained to her that chakra was the mix of spiritual and physical energy that the body naturally produced. He also explained that not a person's ability to use chakra was dependent on the size and state of their chakra coils. He went on to say that they would likely have to build her chakra coils up quite a bit before she could even think of using her chakra and dot. Alright, Azula, put your hands together in the ram seal, like this, and focus on your internal energy. Naruto said, demonstrating the ram seal for the dark-haired girl as he did so. Azula did as he instructed and reached inside her mind to try and draw out the chakra in her body. Well, do you feel anything? Naruto asked after a few moments. Azula hesitated, taking a moment to think before answering. I think so. I'm not sure if it's my chakra, but I feel a slight stirring sensation, as if a gently flowing thing is moving inside my body around my stomach. Naruto nodded. That sounds like chakra, alright. Try to draw upon it. If you do that, it should feel like your connection to it is getting stronger, and you should be able to pull it up into your chest area. Azula concentrated on the feeling in her stomach, but no matter how she focused she couldn't make the chakra respond to her wishes. After a few minutes of trying she sighed and let her hands fall to her sides and looked at the younger boy, waiting for her next instructions. Naruto saw Azula's actions and recognized that she hadn't been able to fully draw on her chakra. Don't worry Azula, lots of people have problems with it at first. I remember a bunch of my classmates took weeks to really get the hang of it. Some of them couldn't even feel their chakra the first few times they tried. Azula nodded in acknowledgement. That did make her feel a bit better about the whole thing. She was a prodigy in firebending and had always excelled with little to no effort, so the idea that she hadn't been able to do so in this situation was a little disconcerting. I will try to keep that in mind, Naruto. She said, now before I continue trying to access my chakra, we are going to work on your training. So far I have been quite pleased with your progress in your bending. You really do have a natural gift for it, but that doesn't mean you can be lax in training. That is why I will begin instructing you in the more defensive forms of firebending. Naruto blinked a little at that. He had thought that firebending didn't really have defensive moves, unless dodging counted. Azula saw his confused expression, and a small smile appeared on her face. Most people failed to realize that firebending did have defensive techniques. They were few and far between, but they were there. Alright, I will demonstrate the first move for you. She told him. I want you to send an attack at me. Naruto nodded and got into his bending stance. He took a deep breath and shot a strong fast punch towards Azula. As he did so, a stream of bright orange fire shot out from his fist and headed for the dark-haired girl. As the blast approached her, Azula brought her arms together in a circling motion, just as the fire reached her. Naruto watched in excitement as a short burst of flame erupted from Azula's own arms. Before she continued the circling arc her arms had been moving in, and as her arms finished the tight circle the blast of fire he had launched at her vanished. That was so cool, Azula. He shouted. You blocked my fire with fire of your own. Are there any other defensive moves I can learn? Oh, is there a way to take my opponent's fire and send it back at them? Azula shook her head in answer to his question. No, Naruto, that isn't possible. As firebenders, we use our own power to block that of others, we do not redirect attacks back at our opponents. That is something only waterbenders can do. Of course, that doesn't mean that we are limited to only blocking fire, with enough strength behind it, that move I just performed can even shatter boulders before they reach me. The 10-year-old frowned a bit when he heard that he wouldn't be able to steal fire from his opponent's attacks and send it back at them. Still he could see how this circular motion for blocking could be used to great advantage. It easily allowed the user to stop incoming attacks head-on and left the user in position to launch a strong counter-attack immediately. When he saw Azula perform the block, he counted at least 4 counter-attacks that she could employ off the top of his head. Her 2 of them stayed in the training ground until the sun set, each working on their respective exercises. By the end of the training session, Naruto had the circular block consigned to muscle memory, and Azula informed him that the 2 would begin to use it in spars in their next training session. Naruto had once again proven that he did indeed have a natural talent for firebending. By contrast, Azula had managed to make no progress in her chakra exercises at all, something she found rather infuriating. That anger did not deter her from seeking to learn how to manipulate her chakra, however, and Naruto assured her that she was still doing far better than many people did when they first began. On another note, Azula was happy to see that her efforts in persuading Naruto to pay attention in his classes since she arrived had borne fruit. In fact, if it were not for her encouragement, she suspected that he would never have known all that he did about the chakra network and how it worked. That would have made learning how to use this new power far more frustrating than it already was. Still, it was a noticeable change from how he had behaved when she first met the boy, and the thought she had already had such an effect on him brought a smile to the girl's lips as the 2 walked back to their apartment. Naruto arrived early to the academy the next day. He was earlier than he had been in his entire time attending the shinobi school. In fact, he didn't do this on a whim, however, he had a purpose. He knew that Sasuke usually arrived early, and he wanted to have a chance to speak to the Uchiha before class began. He wasn't disappointed when he walked into the classroom, quickly spotting the dark-haired boy sitting by one of the windows. Naruto walked over to where Sasuke was and took the seat next to him. The 2 sat there in silence for a few moments before Naruto spoke. I thought about your offer yesterday. I think you're right, it would be good to train with someone my age, and besides, we might become really good friends. He said in an optimistic tone. Sasuke looked over at the blonde and gave him a smirk. I knew you would agree. It just makes too much sense for us not to train together. Naruto nodded in agreement. Also, Azula wants to meet you. That got Sasuke curious. Why would the girl, this other Uzumaki that was supposedly a princess from another land, want to meet him? Was it because he had offered to train with Naruto and possibly become his friend and ally, or was there some other reason? In the end he guessed it didn't really matter, he had wanted to learn more about the girl, and this was the perfect opportunity to do so. Alright, I'm free this afternoon. We can begin training and you can take me to meet her then if you want. Sasuke said. Sounds good to me. Was the only reply that Naruto gave, and the two returned to sitting next to each other in a comfortable silence. As the minutes dragged on, the classroom slowly filled with the other students that were in the class. Naruto noted that the other kids had gathered in small groups and had begun whispering, which actually made for a rather loud and annoying noise. They all seemed to be discussing him and Sasuke. It seemed that the idea of the most talented and popular kid in their class suddenly sitting next to the class clown and village pariah was a little hard for some of them to understand. As more students arrived, more whispering ensued, and Naruto felt his eyes begin to twitch in annoyance. Just as he was about to stand up and shout at his classmates to shut up, a girl broke off from one of the groups and walked over to where he and Sasuke sat. She was a plain-looking girl with brown hair and no real distinguishing features, but Naruto recognized her as being part of Sasuke's so-called fan club. The girl stood there for a moment looking nervous and a little scared before looking at Sasuke and speaking. Sasuke-kun, why are you sitting here? She whispered. Sasuke looked up at the girl with a bored yet somehow demeaning expression on his face. This is where I have been sitting since the year began, why would I suddenly sit somewhere else? He asked, his tone reflecting the same boredom that his face showed. The girl looked even more nervous and flicked her eyes towards Naruto briefly. Well, you know, he is sitting there too. She whispered, bringing her hand up to cup around her mouth, as if that would keep Naruto from hearing her. Naruto himself was torn between feeling hurt that she and everyone else were afraid of him, annoyed that she was acting this way, or angry because she seemed to think that he wouldn't be able to hear her. Before he could react to all this, however, the girl began speaking again. It was horrible what he did to Mizuki-sensei. My mom said he must be some kind of monster to do that to his own teacher. She said again, still whispering. As soon as the words left her mouth, Sasuke's bored expression turned into a glare that made the girl recoil slightly. His next words were spoken in an angry tone that was loud enough for the entire class to hear. Do you think he's a monster now? What a joke. I have seen what a real monster looks like. I watched as a real monster killed everyone I ever loved, and after seeing that, I'm pretty sure that I know what a monster looks and acts like. I'll tell you right now that Naruto is no monster. So what if he accidentally hurt Mizuki-sensei? So what if he put him in the hospital for a few weeks? That doesn't make him a monster, it just makes him strong. You asked why I'm sitting next to him? It's because I would rather keep the company of someone who is strong and reliable than a weakling like you who thinks one incident during a sparring match makes someone a monster. As Sasuke finished his little speech, the girl looked like she was about to cry. She quickly turned her face away from the dark-haired boy and ran off to join the group she had been with before. The class was completely silent for all of 5 seconds before erupting into even more whispers. Naruto looked over at the Uchiha with a stunned look on his face. He hadn't expected him to defend him like that. He was sure of one thing now, he and Sasuke would be great friends. Before anything else could happen in the class, Iruka walked into the room and told everyone to take their seats. Once everyone was in their spots, he began that morning's lesson, which turned out to be another boring lecture. After the lecture, Iruka took everyone outside and announced that they would begin Taijutsu spars. He would call out the name of a student and ask that student to step into the small ring where the sparring match would be held. He would then ask if anyone wanted to volunteer to be their partner. If no one volunteered, he would select someone to be the student's partner on his own. Iruka continued down the list, calling out names until he reached Naruto's name. As Naruto stepped into the ring, Iruka waited for someone to volunteer to spar against him. They liked Naruto a lot and knew that he wasn't a bad kid. When he had first met the blonde, he had hated the boy, but as the years went by, he had begun to see that he was just a lonely child. He had come to enjoy the boy's pranks and jokes and had begun to care for the boy. When the accident with Mizuki had happened, he had worried that it would destroy what little peace Naruto's life had. It seemed his fears were right as he waited for someone to volunteer to spar against the blonde. Before, 1 or 2 people would always step forward to spar against Naruto, if for no other reason than that they thought they could win against the dead last of the class. Now, however, it seemed that his spar with Mizuki had instilled too much fear in the other children. Just as Iruka was about to call on someone to spar against Naruto, someone called out, "I'll spar against him." Sasuke Uchiha stepped into the ring with Naruto, earning a few gasps from the other kids. Sasuke felt the urge to face palm. He had already proven that he wasn't afraid of Naruto, yet people still seemed surprised that he was willing to spar with him. The idiocy of the masses never ceased to impress him. He heard Iruka call out for the 2 combatants to get ready, and he and Naruto got into their respective stances. Sasuke saw Naruto get into a stance that he had never seen before. He had been in his own spar when Naruto had been sparring against Mizuki, so he hadn't gotten a good look at what Naruto had done, other than the fact that he had used a fire technique of some kind. Could this stance be part of a taijutsu form that allowed him to defeat Mizuki? Sasuke hears Iruka call out for the two to begin and rushes at Naruto. Even if this was a new taijutsu form, there was no point in hanging back and letting Naruto get the first strike in. As he got closer to the blonde, he sent a punch at the boy's face. Naruto sidestepped the attack, and Sasuke saw him launch a kick at him out of the corner of his eye. He spun around and used his momentum to knock the kick away from him with his right arm, while at the same time bringing his left leg up to send his own kick at the Uzumaki. The kick struck the blonde in the torso, and he staggered back a bit, allowing Sasuke to take up his stance once again. Naruto stared at the dark-haired boy across from him. Sasuke was good, that was certain. Naruto had been using his fire bending without summoning up his fire, making it into his own taijutsu style. He had hoped that by using an unfamiliar style he could catch the Uchiha off guard and end the match within the first few exchanges of blows. It was clear though that this would be far more difficult than he thought. They had only exchanged a few blows, and already he could tell that the dark-haired boy would be able to adapt to his new style with ease. He would have to press the Uchiha hard if he wanted to win this. So he rushed at Sasuke, much the same as the Uchiha had done to him only moments before. He sent a powerful punch at the dark-haired boy's chest, which was blocked with ease. He followed the punch up with another aimed at Sasuke's face, which was, again, blocked with ease. In defending his face, however, Sasuke had momentarily left his torso open to attack, and Naruto sent a strong kick to the boy's stomach. Sasuke let out a grunt of pain and stumbled backwards, tripping as he did so. This ended with the Uchiha on his back, and Naruto saw an opening to finish the match and rushed forward. As Naruto got close to Sasuke, however, he spun around on his back, swinging his legs around him and kicking Naruto's feet out from under him. As Naruto fell to the ground, Sasuke rose to his feet before all but tackling the blonde. He placed his left arm on Naruto's chest just below the neck to keep him from getting up and held his right hand back in a fist, ready to strike. Before the spar could continue any further though, the two boys heard Iruka call the match with it ending in Sasuke's favor. As Sasuke stood up, he offered a hand to Naruto, helping him up. "I was right," Sasuke said. "You are strong. You almost beat me. If I hadn't caught you with that last kick, I think you would have won." As the two walked back to stand with the rest of the class, Naruto heard even more whispers break out, but there was something different about the whispers this time. As they passed a group of girls, he managed to catch a bit of their conversation. "But Sasuke-kun seems to like him. So that means he can't be all bad. What if our parents are wrong?" One girl whispered. "That's right," said another. "And he just proved he is strong. I heard Sasuke-kun say that he could have won if he hadn't gotten that last move in." The first girl nodded. "Me too. Oh, and remember that girl that was with him the other day? She said that she was related to him somehow, and the Hokage said she was a princess. Maybe that means that Naruto is a prince." Iruka called the class back inside before he could hear more of the conversation. The rest of the day proved to be rather boring, as Iruka had the class do more reading and listening to lectures, but the whispering kept up until class let out for the afternoon. Of course, Naruto also noticed that a few of the girls in the class had begun sneaking small glances at him and had strange gleams in their eyes, which made him feel uncomfortable to say the least. He wasn't sure why though. Once the class was released, Naruto and Sasuke made their way out of the building and along the streets of Konoha, Naruto leading the way to the training ground where they were to meet Azula. Once they had gotten there, he saw that the dark-haired girl was already waiting for them. "Azula Haim," Naruto called out in greeting as he walked up to the girl. "Hello Naruto," Azula said once the boy reached her. "I assume this is the friend you told about yesterday." She motioned to Sasuke, who was standing behind him. Naruto beamed. "Yep. This is Sasuke Uchiha." "Sasuke, this is Azula Haim." Sasuke stepped forward and bowed to the girl. "It's very nice to meet you," he said. Azula gave her own slight bow and said, "It is nice to meet you as well." Sasuke looked up at the taller girl for a moment before speaking again. "Naruto told me you wanted to meet me." "Why?" "I did, yes, but that conversation will have to wait for a little while. It seems we have an uninvited guest." As soon as Azula finished speaking, she sent a short burst of blue fire at a tree to the right of the small group. The tree didn't catch on fire, but it did make an "eep" sound. Naruto blinked. Since when did trees "eep"? He got his answer when a small shape fell out of the tree and landed in the bushes, making an audible thump. The group walked over to where the figure had fallen and looked as a girl lay in the bushes, an expression of slight pain on her face. She was a small girl with short blue hair and a style cut. She wore short tan pants and white coat, along with blue shinobi sandals. Azula, who stood in the front of the group, gave a positively menacing smirk. "Well, what have we here?" she asked as she stared down at one Hinata Hyuga. The small girl looked up at the Fire Nation princess and uttered a single sound. Yep.